In this video, I want to reintroduce us to the Pythagorean Theorem and some vocabulary about right triangles. We are going to be using right triangles really strongly through the course of this semester. So if you do not recall this vocabulary, here is the time to get back on board with it. All right, let's take a look at the document camera. So I have here a right triangle. I've got this bracket here indicating that there's my right angle. Traditionally, the sides are called A, B, and C like this, but you could really use any variables you like or numbers in place of these things if we know how long some of these sides are. And here's a little vocabulary. The sides that are adjacent to the right angle are called the legs of the right triangle. And the side that's opposite the right angle, the longest side of the right triangle, is called the hypotenuse. I don't know either. All right. And so if we've got a right triangle with these two legs and this hypotenuse, there is a really amazing relationship between the lengths of those three sides. And that relationship is that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. Okay, so let's take a quick look at kind of how you might solve a problem or two like this. All right, so let's say I have a triangle like this, and I know that this side is 3 units long and this side is 4 units long, and I want to know how long x is. All right, so I recognize that this is a right triangle, and I set this up in such a way that, it matches the Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to take the legs, which are 3 and 4, and I'm going to square them, and I'm going to add them together. And the sum is going to be equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. Now, as I say, I don't have to use c. In fact, I'm already using the variable x for this. So x is the length of the hypotenuse, so I can write it like that. All right, so then I just do a little bit of calculation. 3 squared is equal to 9. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is equal to 16, is equal to x squared. 9 and 16 make 25. And then we've got to take the square root of both sides, or we have to ask ourselves what positive number times itself is equal to 25. And the answer to that is 5. Okay, so we have here what we often call a 3, 4, 5 right triangle. And this is something where you don't even need to do the math if you recognize this shape, that whenever you've got a 3 and a 4, the hypotenuse is going to be 5. Whenever you've got a hypotenuse of 5 and one length of 3, you know the other leg is going to be 4. All right, let's take a look at a second problem. And let me make this a real world problem. Let's say that I have a ladder that is 13 feet long and it's lying against a house in such a way that it's just at the base of a window. And I know that's 12 feet off the ground. And so I want to know how far away the base of the ladder is from the side of the house. Okay, so when I've got a word problem like that, first thing I do is I'm going to make a diagram. All right, so here's my ladder against the wall looking like that. And there's the side of the house, and here's the ground. And I know that since this is a well-built house, it forms a right angle. The side of the house forms a right angle with the ground. So I've got a right triangle here. And I told you that the length of the ladder was 13 feet. So here is the side of the ladder leaning against the house. And I know that the spot it reaches is 12 feet above the ground. And so in this case, I want to know how far the base of the ladder is from the side of the house. So that is my x. Once again, I recognize that this is a right triangle where I know the lengths of two sides and I want to find the length of the third side. So I can use the Pythagorean theorem for that. And so what I do is I take the two legs, they're 12 and x, and I square them and I add them together. And that's going to be the length of the hypotenuse squared. Okay? And then I do little calculations. The longer you've been at this, the more you know the table of squares. 13 times 13 is 169. We subtract 144 from both sides of the equation, and that gets us once again that x squared is equal to 25. And so like we saw in the last problem, x is equal to 5. So that means that the base of the ladder is 5 feet away from the side of the house. Okay, and just like we had a 3, 4, 5 right triangle, this is another example. This is called a 5, 12, 13 right triangle. Turns out there aren't a lot of cases where all of the sides work out to be integer lengths. Usually it's an irrational number and there's some ugly square root. We'll have to deal with those, but recognizing those cases where we have whole numbers for all three sides, that's called the Pythagorean triple. They come up in word problems all the time just because they're easy to work with. So if you can find yourself getting in the pattern of recognizing these triples like 3, 4, 5 and 5, 12, 13, it's going to help your problem solving immensely. But at any rate, the main point of this was just to remind you of the Pythagorean theorem and how we use it to solve the lengths of sides of right triangles.